and welcome to Ballot Meridian election coverage on Home TV. I'm Elizabeth Crenshaw. Joining us for this candidate interview is Billie Jo O'Berry, Republican candidate for the Ingham County Prosecutor. Welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yes, thank you. I'm Billie Jo O'Berry, and I am seeking the position of Ingham County Prosecuting Attorney.
Thank you. Well, let's get started. Each Ingham County prosecutor will be asked a standard list of 10 questions. Let's get started with question number 1. So our first question for you, what qualifications do you bring to the position of Ingham County prosecutor?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I have been a practicing attorney since 1984. I went into private practice for a while, and while I was a private practitioner, I was on the court-appointed list for juvenile cases through Ingham County Prosecutor's Office. And after that, I became an assistant city attorney for the city of Lansing, and I've been prosecuting cases for almost 30 years now for the city of Lansing. Prior to that, before I began practicing as an attorney, I actually started working for the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office, Ray Scadeller, back in 1975. At that time, I was hired along with a director. It was an entry-level position, and to look at the pretrial diversion program and set up a program for Ingham County. And I'm very proud to say that that same program that was started in 1975 is still in existence today. So literally, I've learned the legal system in Ingham County from the entry-level position all the way through to the appellate process. While being an assistant city attorney for the city of Lansing, as I said, I handle trials for the city of Lansing, and those would be cases such as drunk driving, frequenting drug houses, property damage, assault and batteries, which are parallel to cases that the county prosecutor's office would handle under state law. So we have dual jurisdiction in many areas. In addition to that, I do municipal law on behalf of the city of Lansing, which includes things like drafting ordinances, drafting resolutions, advising the various departments in the city of Lansing, giving them legal opinions, dealing with the neighborhoods and issues that the neighborhoods have in the city of Lansing. This has all given me a very broad base of experience to work with the citizens of Ingham County. I've also taught trial skills workshop for the Western Michigan Cooley Law School for about 19 years, and what we did was actually conduct mock trials where I instructed students on how to handle both civil litigation as well as criminal prosecution. I also supervise externs from the law schools, MSU College of Law, as well as Western Michigan Cooley Law School, and supervise them and train them for handling cases, doing prosecution in the city attorney's office. I have, again, a very broad base of experience. This is helpful for the position of Ingham County Prosecutor because, as you know, the prosecutor is the chief law enforcement official for the county. As in that position, not only do you have to understand the trial process, but you also have to handle administrative decisions as well. And working for the city of Lansing, I have been involved intimately in decisions about processing cases, making decisions about what types of cases get issued, the dispositions of cases, and the handling of those, as well as budgetary issues. I'm on a committee with the Law Courts and Cops Committee, where it encompasses personnel from various departments, from the law enforcement community, the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office, the court administrators, myself, and we get information about areas that need to be looked at for improvement to provide better justice to the citizens of Lansing and handle the resources in an efficient and effective way. So those are all experiences that I bring with me that I already have. I don't have to learn the like on-the-job training. I already know. I've been working with the personnel in this county for years now. They already know my reputation. They know that I'm straightforward and that I will follow the law. I do believe in the rule of law, which means that I believe that the laws exist for the people, not for the government to control people, but to give us a framework so that we can all live together in peace and harmony. And that's what I want to do here in Ingham County, is bring more harmony back to this area.
And for question number 2, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing the prosecutor's office and how do you plan to address it?
The biggest challenge right now is restoring confidence in that office. I mean, we underwent a terrible blow, the law enforcement community, the prosecutor's office, the courts, and government officials in general, because there is a perception out there by the citizens that people in those positions aren't really looking out for their best interests, that we're self-serving and that we're just looking for what's in our own best interest. And unfortunately, the situation with the former prosecutor Stuart Dunnings goes along with that idea that people think that they're above the law, and we are not. We are people, we are citizens just like the rest of the citizenry. We are there because the citizens choose us, give us that opportunity to serve them, and I respect that, and I want to earn that respect. And so that's the main thing, is to restore trust and confidence in that office.
Question number 3, what is your opinion on alternative sentencing methods?
Well, we have thousands of cases that go through the system every year, and being an assistant city attorney for the city of Lansing, I've handled thousands of cases. I've been in trials. As recently as 2 weeks ago, I had a trial. We have to look at alternative types of programs because, as you can imagine, not every single case can go to trial. So one of the things that we do is at the district court level, you would have a pretrial conversation with the defendant and or their attorney. At the felony level, you have, prior to it being bound over to circuit court, you have a preliminary examination. But at that time, you look at the cases and you look to see if one of the specialty courts could possibly be more responsive to the facts of that situation. So for example, the pretrial diversion program, which I said I was a part of in starting there in Ingham County, and which we also have in the city of Lansing as well. You would look at that to see, is this an isolated incident? Is this person regularly involved in criminal activity? Or was it what I call a situational crime? For example, 2 roommates, maybe they've drank too much and they get in an argument and it becomes loud and the neighbors call the police. So now we have a charge of being loud and boisterous. Is it in the best interest of the public to prosecute those individuals, or perhaps an alternative through diversion where they pay costs to community service to keep their record clear of a misdemeanor conviction? That may be in the best interest of the community at large, because then that makes those individuals employable. They don't have a criminal offense on their permanent criminal history. And in turn, by having employment, they contribute to the economy of the area. So those are the kinds of things that are alternative. Also, I'm very proud to say that my husband is a past commander of the VFW Post 7309 in Mason, Michigan, and that they were an organization that had one of the first referrals to the Veterans Court, which is in 54B District Court in East Lansing. And for some individuals suffering from PTSD that have returned from military combat, that may be in the best interest of the public, rather than just sending this individual through the system to be convicted and pay a fine and not getting type of services. That might not be the best. The sobriety courts are excellent ways when the participants voluntarily choose to enter into those programs to address not only the offense, they take accountability for the offense that they committed, for example, drunk driving, but they also agree to participate in programs to assess them and to obtain treatment so they don't repeat. The mental health court is another court that is a good alternative. That's a newer court, and it's headed by Judge Boyd, and also at the district court level, as well as Judge Jamo at the circuit court level. And we all know that there's a need for the mental health court. The problem is we had to work out the mechanics of that. It's good in theory, but how do we get individuals from Lansing to Mason to avail themselves of, to be screened and to determine whether or not they will benefit from that program? These are the kinds of things that I, based on my experience, am aware of, and I have experience at working with these courts. And I think that they're a great alternative, just simply convicting someone, giving them jail time, or giving them a fine, and that's the end of it. And there is no treatment, there's no follow-up or anything like that. So I am a big proponent of the specialty courts. One other area is teen court. We have, the prosecutor's office has jurisdiction over individuals under the 16 years of age and under. people don't know this, but after 16, when you become 17, you are go through the adult court. You're considered an adult for criminal purposes. But for those who come before the court at 16 and under, a petition is filed by the Ingham County Prosecutor's office that goes through the office. And an alternative, again, when the participants are agreeable, and the parents are also included in this, they go through teen court, where they have an opportunity to avail themselves of programs similar to the adult diversion program, where we don't want young people, for example, if they've been convicted, or charged with drinking and they're underage, we don't want that to follow them into their adult life if they're willing to do something to turn themselves around and not relapse and continue on a program of responsible drinking. So those are all good alternatives to just the traditional type of sentencing.
Moving on to question number 4. How does jail overcrowding affect the county prosecutor's decision?
Jail overcrowding should not play into the decision of the prosecutor in reviewing a case, in deciding the appropriate charges to issue, and making a determination on whether to prosecute or not. That comes after the sentencing phase. Now, we can agree in certain circumstances, the prosecutor can agree to cap the amount of jail time, or they can agree that no jail time will be requested by the prosecuting attorney's office. I say that, however, in cases, for example, where there's a victim, where there's an assault and battery, that would only be offered, that cap on whether to be asked for jail time or not, is in cooperation with the victim. We would make it mandatory that we always talk with the victim about their thoughts on whether or not jail time or not is sought. Often, when I have worked with victims at the city and talked to them about that, do you want to see this person go to jail? Or really, what is it that you want? Often they will say, I really don't want the person to go to jail. I just want them to be held accountable. I want them to acknowledge their guilt before the court, and I want them to seek some type of help. And a lot of times that's an anger management course. Or if it's a domestic violence case, that they perhaps go on probation for a while and participate in various programs to avail themselves of assistance to prevent repeat offenses.
Well, question number 5, what is your approach toward negotiating plea bargains versus trial litigations in criminal cases?
Plea negotiations sometimes gets a bad name because it sounds like we're making a deal and letting somebody off. In reality, it isn't. Quite often, plea negotiation is necessary because it would be impossible for all cases to go to trial. And often, as a prosecutor, when you're sitting down with the individual in a pretrial and you're talking to them about the facts of the case, you come to realize that just having this person be prosecuted isn't necessarily, and getting a conviction, for example, a loud and boisterous, as I used earlier, isn't necessarily going to accomplish anything more than maybe they were at the apartment and the lawful owner asked them to leave. So you have a trespass charge. They're both misdemeanors. Is it going to accomplish anything to require that they plead guilty to both counts? Maybe not, because they're not going to get dual jail time. The jail time would be cumulative rather than consecutive in a misdemeanor case. So it might be more prudent, a more effective use of justice or the court's resources to say, if you want to plead guilty to one of those charges, then we will dismiss one charge, and in return, your costs will be higher and you have to plead guilty to the charge. So in effect, you're accomplishing the same purpose, but yet you're avoiding having to pay the cost of having witnesses come in for trial. You're avoiding having the officers be paid overtime for coming in for trial, and plus the inconvenience to the citizens of having them come to court and having to wait to have the trial. They're taken away from their jobs, their families, and things like that. So again, I have extensive experience in making those judgment calls. And as the prosecutor, I would be the leader to the staff, the assistant prosecuting attorneys, to say to them, you have prosecutorial discretion to use plea bargaining effectively. That doesn't mean that everyone that walks in, you agree to dismiss a charge or you dismiss all the charges. That means that you look at the situation and you talk to the victim if there's a victim, you talk to the police officer, and you make a decision on what will accomplish justice here. We want to hold the person accountable, but what will be the most effective and be fair to everyone, all parties involved?
Well, we're a little over halfway. Should the prosecutor's office put more or less resources towards the prosecution of drug-related cases? Excuse me.
I have recently attended a rally at the Capitol just last week, and it was a recovery program. I have always been of the belief and opinion that use of controlled substances and alcohol are usually an underlying cause of a lot of our criminal offenses. For example, of course, we all know that drunk driving or driving under the influence of drugs involves drugs and alcohol, but also domestic violence. It's very probable that the individual that's the accused may have been under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Sometimes with thefts, retail fraud, amazingly, a lot of times people will be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or be stealing something because they're trying to get goods that they can later sell to get money to get alcohol and drugs. So this is a huge problem. The prosecutor has to coordinate with the agencies that are out there to get involved with programs for people so people can be referred to these programs. Because again, just simply getting a conviction doesn't solve the problem. We have to have follow-up. We need to get people into these recovery programs so that they don't relapse. And one of the areas where we're sadly lacking are programs for women and teens. And so that's why I'm very excited about the teen court here in Ingham County. I'd also like to see more programs for women as well. But you know, there's a stigma. People are hesitant to go into programs and acknowledge that they have an addiction. They feel that there's a stigma, and they don't want to have others look at them and say, you know, this person is an addict. I applaud them. If they're there, they're in recovery and they're seeking assistance and they're seeking support from their peers, I applaud them. My father, in fact, was a recovering alcoholic, so I understand what's involved for the family and their friends around them. And we have to get beyond this. We have to acknowledge that alcohol and drugs are a huge problem in this area, and people should not be embarrassed to seek help.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left remaining of our questions. Question number 7, what is your philosophy on juvenile justice?
Well, I've kind of touched on it a few times in the opening here, that I think that our greatest deterrent to the increase in crime, the crime rate, and by the way, in Ingham County, we are second only to Wayne County. Since 2012, the crime rate, violent crimes have gone up. And again, we're only second to Wayne County. That's troubling. The greatest chance that we have for intervention is at the younger ages. We have to get involved with the young people. And sometimes it starts out as truancy from school. So we need to have people trained and aware. And just suspending students from school is not the answer. If they're not coming to school, why do you want to suspend them further? We need to have intervention, and we need to have the schools on board with this as well. And if we can intervene in these children, and this includes ages 11 to 16 in the teen court, if we can get involved at that level and change the habits and the conduct and make them aware and educate individuals, they're less likely to relapse into their teen years, and get them involved in positive programs, get the support of the family around them. I work at the city attorney's office. Of course, we don't deal with the juveniles. Anyone 16 and under would go through the Ingham County, through the Ingham County Prosecutor's office. But I often see young people between the ages of 17 to 20 who are involved with drugs and alcohol. And if they have no prior offenses, we'll use the diversion program to intervene and require that they go for a program to learn about the effects of alcohol and education program, as well as pay costs and do community service. And I've had young people call back and say, I enjoyed that so much that I'm going to continue to do community service. And that is wonderful, because those young people are good role models for the other individuals that are coming into the courts. And that's what teen courts and peer groups do, is they have the young people who have been through the program come back and be mentors, in effect, to the younger people. That's our best chance, is to work with the juveniles as early as possible to prevent them continuing on down a path of criminal activity, because it will escalate. If there's not an intervention, it will escalate into bigger crimes, more serious drinking, more drugs. So we need to really pay attention to our juveniles here in Ingham County.
Moving on to question number 8. What is your approach to addressing human trafficking concerns with Ingham County?
Again, I have been involved in talking with some individuals about human trafficking. This ties in very closely to prostitution. And again, as we found with our former prosecuting attorney, this situation is prevalent. We are not aware of it. We think about this as being something that occurs in big cities. Oh, human trafficking doesn't happen in Lansing, Michigan, but it does. It happens in all counties. I was in a pretrial with a young woman who came into court about a week ago. And she was very, very nervous, and she was charged with possession of drug paraphernalia, not narcotics, just the paraphernalia, which was 2 hypodermic needles. Now, I could have simply said, well, you need to plead guilty because you were caught with these needles, and you need to plead guilty and you'll be fined, and that's the end of it. I didn't do that. I spent the time, and this is what I want my assistant prosecutors to do, spend the time and talk to the individual, because as we talked, there was another story there. This young woman was not from Lansing. She had met he was older than her, but a young man who brought her to Lansing, supposedly as her boyfriend. He got her into a lifestyle that she was uncomfortable with, but she was away from family and friends. And he was physically aggressive with her, and there was domestic violence. The reason why the police officers, their attention was brought to her was because they saw her fall down on the street. They weren't sure if she was pushed or slapped or if she fell. But when they stopped to question her, she lied and told them that she had fallen because she was afraid of the boyfriend. And when I asked her why did she have these hypodermic needles in her purse, because there were no drugs in her purse, she said it was because he had made her put them in her purse because he didn't want to get caught with them. We have lots of situations like that. Someone needs to intervene. And I said to the young woman, do you have family or friends that you could contact? She did not hear. And I told her, I gave her my card and said, if you need assistance, I will make sure that you are returned to your home. Because that's the thing, is these young women have to be given some networking. And I have talked to others in this community, and there are services out there available that will work. But we have to have people come forward. And it's very difficult because people will say, well, why don't they just get out of that? Why don't they just go home? It's not that easy. They're intimidated. They may be addicted as well. They may be dependent on this individual for money, for a place to live. So they need a support base. And that is one thing, as Ingham County Prosecutor, I will make sure that I attend these meetings and these groups. I was very disappointed at the rally on the recovery group. It was a Vox recovery group, at how few people were there that should have been there to hear about the program and the success that they've had. And I would advocate for that, and that's the first thing you have to do. You have to educate your law enforcement community to be aware of the signs. Perhaps they should have taken this young woman to the side and talked to her individually away from this man. Maybe the officers should have given her a business card and asked for her to call later. Now, under the legislation for human trafficking, if anyone comes, the new legislation that Judy Emmons has sponsored, if an individual comes forward that is the victim of human trafficking and they have been a prostitute, they will not be prosecuted. They will be immune from prosecution if they come forward. So I think this is very positive. But awareness and education and training are the keys to combating this growing trend in human trafficking. But we have to be aware because it affects all of us.
We have 3 minutes remaining. What, if any, support does the prosecutor office need from the public?
To let us know. I always say, if you see it, say it. Most of our crimes are solved by citizens coming forward and sharing information with the law enforcement community. It's not the government against the citizens. I was at a meeting at 3200 South Washington, the Lansing Housing Commission, and some people were not there. And the reason why was they were afraid to come forward. They were afraid that, you know, law enforcement may target them. They may have had an outstanding warrant themselves for maybe back child support. What I want from the community is to contact us, let us know, invite me to their groups. I have been to neighborhood associations all over the county, not just the city, but all over the county. Communication, conversation. We need to know one another. Community policing, I'm a big advocate of community policing. One of our officers over at 3200 South Washington said when he first got there that none of the residents wanted to talk to him. They'd walk the other way when they saw him. But now that they know him, they know his name, they will come up to him, ask how he's doing. When they see him in a store or a restaurant, they'll come up and talk to him. We are people. We're not without flaws, but we're here to help. And that's what I want. I want a staff that's involved, that goes to these programs, that goes out into the community. We need to be visible, not detached like our former prosecutor.
We have a few minutes remaining. Would you like to give a brief closing statement?
Yes. Again, I have been a part of this community since I was 12 years old. I moved to Ingham County. I've worked downtown Lansing for years. I've worked down in Mason. I've lived in Lansing. My daughter went to Line Street at Lines Avenue School here in Lansing. I care about the people here. People know me. I have a reputation of being fair. I saw a gentleman walking down the street one day and he said, "I remember you, you're that prosecutor lady." And he said, I said, "Well, I hope that you felt like you were treated fair when you dealt with me." He goes, "You were very fair." He goes, "I made a mistake and, you know, I paid the consequences." He goes, "But I use you as an example. I tell my kids, don't mess up because Ms. O'Berry is firm. She will follow the law." And I said, "How's that worked out?" And he said, "I have really good kids." And I said, "Then I've done my job. If you feel that I've treated you fairly and that I have helped in your children becoming good citizens, then that's my goal, that's my aim. And I will do that for all of Ingham County. I've been in every area of Ingham County, from Bunker Hill Township, that some people don't even know that, where that is, Lott Township, Wheatfield, Williamston, Meridian. We're all in this together, and we need to stop thinking about that problems are limited to the city of Lansing, that they're in the urban area, and that we're immune in the suburbs. We are a region, and we have to work together on all of these problems. I said to someone recently, we were talking about what type of animal we are. I said, "I'm like the old bloodhound." I said, "I get on the trail and I get the job done. I'm reliable, I'm trustworthy, and I will work for you." And they said, "That's a great analogy," but that is what I intend to do as prosecutor. I have this base of knowledge and information. I have the reputation in the community for being fair and caring. So I am on a mission to help restore the trust and confidence in the prosecuting attorney's office for Ingham County.
Well, thank you very much for your time. This has been a candidate interview with Billie Jo O'Berry, Republican candidate for Ingham County Prosecutor. I'm Elizabeth Crenshaw, inviting you to watch ballot Meridian election coverage right here on HOMTV.